coming into the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, all of the speculation was about Max Verstappen and his Red Bull racing future. Why? Because after the Bahrain Grand Prix, Helmut Marko, Red Bull's motorsport advisor, admitted that the concern is great that Verstappen may seek to leave the team. Now, Scott, today Max Verstappen had to face us and the rest of the F1 media, so he must have had something to say about this, surely.
He did, but what he had to say about it was that he had very little to say about it. Max's reaction was actually a mix of what we've seen so far, which is not really wanting to engage in speculation, talk about anything non-performance related, which is a deliberate strategy I think he's adopted for this year, but also a little bit of that kind of, sort of like cutting comment with a little bit of wit and a little bit of a smile. It's not like 100% deadpan, being difficult, being rude, or anything like that. It's the kind of remark that if you see it written down, you see it on a social media post or something like that, it probably comes across as a lot more harsh when he's just sort of like batting away and sidestepping questions. He said it with a smile. He's sort of saying it lightly and breezily. As Max kind of said, everyone's sort of talking about this except for him, and it's his opinion ultimately that matters. So he wasn't so much giving us much to read between the lines of as or like dropping breadcrumbs or anything like that, so much as like tossing the breadcrumbs up in the air and letting the wind from today blow them wherever, and just letting everybody try and see what that could possibly mean.
Well, that's exactly it, because he kept saying the same things. He said, my focus is on working through our problems, making the car better. We're all united in wanting to do that. Well, of course they are. But he didn't even do the kind of bat it away, saying, no, this is nonsense. He didn't even do the standard, oh, my contract's to 2028, that kind of thing that we've heard from him in the past. So it seems to me like it's very much, he's got other people around the place, shall we say, who can agitate. Helmut Marko, obviously, Jos Verstappen, sometimes he's been known to say things as well, his father. So
even Raymond Vermeulen, his manager.
Exactly, and there was all the talk.
Who's here this weekend.
Exactly, and there was a talk after the race in Bahrain about a set to and crisis meetings and arguments, possibly all a little bit exaggerated, but certainly some disagreements, let's say, with Raymond and the rest at Red Bull. So Max just can let that play out, can't he? He doesn't have to get involved with it because it's been set alight and he just has not been putting it out. But he doesn't need to fan the flames.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you can read it one of two ways. You could interpret it, what Max is doing, as inadvertently stoking the speculation, because he hasn't come out and said emphatically, staying at Red Bull Racing, that it's nonsense, that Helmut's wrong to be worried or anything like that. And Max isn't stupid. There'll be a part of him that knows by not shutting that down entirely, he isn't shutting it down, and he will invite a little bit of speculation or whatever. But I think the other way you can interpret it, which I think is sort of more of what Max is about and why he's doing this, is that he doesn't care. He's just not interested in engaging in this stuff. He's always been a driver who's been kind of less inclined to go down that route and talk about such things openly. He's very honest and open. If you ask him the question, he'll give you an answer. But this year, like I say, I feel like he has withdrawn from that even more. We know that he's doing less Red Bull marketing stuff. As I understand it, he's been shorter with answers in Dutch media and broadcasting appearances, as well as in English. And he's been very, very focused on performance aspects. But he doesn't want to lose any energy at all discussing his future. As you say, he's got other people that can do that for him. So I think it's more that. I think it's more that Max doesn't care about engaging in it, shutting it down, or fanning the flames, as you put it. If one of the consequences is that the story keeps rumbling on, I think Max sort of just shrugs his shoulders as that. But what I think his main thing is that if there's going to be headlines, if there's going to be speculation, if there's going to be Max might go here, Max might do this, it won't be because it came from him.
Exactly, yes. And I guess the big question that everybody watching this will want to know is what actually is happening. Is there a serious prospect of Max Verstappen leaving this team for 2026? Because there was talk about this last year. Yeah. There's talk about it again this year. Some will say, well, he's got that contract to 2028. He's set fair for several years now. So what do we actually know about that possibility?
Well, it is a possibility. He has the contract until 2028, but Red Bull has even been talking openly about the fact that there are performance clauses within that. We know that one of them is in effect this year around the summer break if a certain performance criteria is not met. So when I say that, not to misspeak, it's not in effect now, but it can be in effect this year. So it might be that in 2-3 months' time, Verstappen has free agency in his control. We don't know exactly what that is, but it seems to relate to either not necessarily Red Bull's specific championship position, maybe Max's championship position, or a specific way of benchmarking its competitive prospects or whatever. So you're looking at, is it top 3 in the championship? Is it something slightly more nebulous, like having a race-winning car or whatever? It'll be something that's measurable, otherwise it wouldn't work from a legally binding document point of view. But the point is that yes, it's a possibility. That's why Marko came out and said he's worried. But one, we should say with that Marko point, he's speaking for himself, not Red Bull Racing. Yes, he's motorsport advisor for Red Bull, but we've seen plenty of times in the past where Marko's not a Red Bull Racing spokesperson officially. So in this situation, it was very much Helmut's own opinion, and you can also interpret that as, well, Helmut's future is very closely tied to Max Verstappen's. It was here 12 months ago that Max made it very clear, basically, if you get rid of Marko, then I don't want to be here anymore. And it was almost borderline, if Marko goes, I'll go. So you could interpret what Helmut's saying as, well, his concern isn't about Verstappen leaving, it's about Verstappen leaving and leaving Marko vulnerable, right? What it will come down to is the results that Max is getting this year, but also the context of how he's getting them, the performance of the car, the development of the car, how the team is responding to his feedback, how he feels within the team, what his prospects he thinks he has with this team for 2026 and beyond. And I don't know about you, but I'm not at all convinced that anything in the last 2 or 3 weeks has really changed about that.
Well, that's the thing. Obviously, if he's going to leave, then it's about where he goes. And we know Red Bull have troubles, but the two teams that are persistently talked about are Mercedes and Aston Martin. Now, Mercedes is having a decent season. Aston Martin, against expectations, is having a pretty bad season. Both can be championship-winning teams in the future, certainly, but is there enough to commit to leaving Red Bull Racing as early as 26 to go to one of those two? And if so, which one is in pole position?
Exactly, and that is that question mark over whether it would be for 2026, which I think is so interesting, because my read of the situation a few weeks ago was that Max didn't have an intention of leaving for 2026, and that his intention was to see out 26, get the lay of the land with the new rules, and then make a move for 27.
And that actually matched what a few people in Max's circle were saying as well. So
yes,
that wasn't just an impression, that was a guided impression.
Yeah, absolutely. And it fit with sort of where certain teams were and what they were likely to do and whatnot. You know, right now you'd look at it and say, why would Mercedes replace George Russell when he's performing as he is? Why would they replace Kimi Antonelli after just one season? With Aston Martin, they've got Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll under contract, and Alonso said today he doesn't envisage being Max's teammate because he's got a contract for next year. So he said in a very Fernando way that, you know, it's flattering for the Aston project that Max is linked with them, but he doesn't see that happening in the short term. But with where those two teams are at and what Max might get, I think what might have changed in the last few weeks is Max getting a better idea of the competitive picture, because I don't think there'll be a driver on the grid who has a better idea of what all the engines can offer. Because if he wants to find out what Marko have got for 26, I suspect he could probably find out, because it's all part of the marketing play, isn't it? The negotiating play. He'll know what he could have a very good idea of what Honda's up to if he wanted. He'll know what Red Bull are doing and what potential disadvantage they may have. So it may be that Max has thought, well, actually, what is best for me right now is to get out of here for 2026 and make the move now, because my marketing power and negotiating power might be weaker in 12 months' time if Merck have a great engine and, you know, there are other drivers performing well, anything like that. But these are the things that we don't know and we can only speculate on at the moment. And Max, in the way that he's talking, is making damn well sure that all we can do is speculate and we won't know for certain.
And of course, the other thing is, to come back to the beginning, Helmut Marko said they were concerned. Because the other thing is, could this be leverage for Max Verstappen to get some change he wants within Red Bull? He wants to be competitive. That's the change he wants. What does he think needs to happen for that to take place? And that's the big question. There's definitely something going on here. We don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but I think Max Verstappen has certainly set out his stall not to tell us.